Welcome to the Game On podcast tonight. Port Adelaide stun the Hawks in a Sunday massacre. And the Crows still lacking that killer blow after Geelong got going. And is the Gather Round set to stay in SA on a long-term deal? Let's do this. Welcome to the Game On podcast. My name's Pete. Once again, joined in the studio here with Malcolm and mate. Firstly, loving the shirt. We better give a shout out to good old Dwayne Russell and what is it, Mad Mondays or Midday Madness?
Yeah,
I think
Midday
it is.
Madness, yes. May have got interviewed on air by Dwayne and congratulated him for his role in Norwood's 1984 premiership for his lace-out pass to Craig Barn with 8 minutes to go. And the producer did ask afterwards, said, you do public speaking? I said, yeah, a fair bit, all that sort of things.
Yep.
He said, yeah, that was a class above our average caller. So
Well, we
I
might
did
have
get
to
a laugh out of that.
Might have to send a little snapshot there to Dwayno and see if we can get him on the show at some stage. It would be absolutely fantastic. Mate, have to ask, book sales go all right over the weekend, I should say?
It did. Let's just say in Elder Park, though, just one person, because it's not AFL accredited, despite the fact no one had a problem the day before and walked out, just valued their own importance. Common sense went out the window, so yeah, a bit disappointing there. But
I think you've got a little bit in the good, the bad, the ugly coming up, mate. Let's get into Around the Grounds. We've got a big episode to cover tonight.
Around the Grounds.
All right, mate, coming up on Around the Grounds, we're going to talk the soccer, we're going to talk a little bit more of the SANFL and the footy. But let's kick off with the AFL to start with. Gather Round, round 5, we'll kick off with the obvious. It's got to be here to stay, doesn't it?
It does. I think Peter Malinowski's been pretty smart, though, making sure they're not going to pay well above cost and that. There's enough brownie points in and just showing, and so many people just saying it's got to be here. Right from every state, saying, no, Adelaide is the perfect place, it works, etc. Look, it's exceeded expectations well and truly. Like, I think it's 250,000 with the crowds in the end.
Yep.
You know, so you actually had games which probably got more here, like Sydney Collingwood was 46,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not getting 46,000 at the SCG.
Yes.
Yeah, it might have got a few more in Melbourne.
Yep.
But the various things, you know, I even think at the moment, you think Melbourne and Essendon, I don't reckon that game would get 45,000 at the G at the moment.
Yep.
And it got 45 here. So overall, I think just huge ticks. And the games at Norwood were fantastic. The Barossa came up really well in the background and all that side of things. So really good advert for SA Tourism. And, you know, the two games at Norwood, the game on Saturday was a cracker.
Was it ever? We did say a bit earlier, you know, the Premiers playing at Norwood Oval, do they deserve a greater audience? But I think they've embraced Norwood.
They have. I did catch up with Scotty Borlace, and Scotty, you know, okay, you can say, oh, well, he's a Norwood man and he comes from Norwood, so he's going to speak glowingly about Norwood. But he spoke on a Brisbane perspective overall, that they did the thing at training, that they put their cones out to the exact length of Norwood Oval and the width and all that, and trained to that perspective.
Yes.
And, yeah, they were full of glowing. And St Kilda were really complimentary the year before also.
Yep.
So, yeah, look.
And Hawthorn wanted to play there.
Hawthorn asked to play there, yeah. So, overall, the clubs, we've received big ticks.
Yep.
There were a couple of things I thought were really weird. I've got to chase it up. I assume I don't get the scoreboard was all covered, everything down. So, considering the weather, there would have been 200 people underneath the scoreboard for the shade.
Yep.
And also, that stopped a van being there. Last year was a hot dog van, which then took the pressure off that scoreboard canteen.
Yep.
So I've got to chase that up a little bit. Just ask a couple of questions, because for my mind it was bloody silly.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, unusually hot weather. We get that. It is what it is. It might even rain next year. Who knows?
Yeah.
Let's just talk about Gather Round as the concept. You've pointed out perfectly that Peter Malinowski has
Exceeded expectations.
Exceeded expectations.
Yep.
Thank you for helping me spit that one out. Other states are obviously envious of it, but I don't think having it anywhere else, one, from a central point of view, but also from the way that Adelaide sets up its part-time events, like the Adelaide 500,
or
the Gather Round.
The Food and Wine Festival, which, when you think of it, where the weather was shit house for it,
yes.
for wine,
yes.
Was over 25% of people and takings, which surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of purely because of the weather.
Yep.
So it works. Norwood Oval's perfect as a venue, and also being so close to Adelaide Oval, so plenty of people are going to both games.
Yes. And that seemed to be the questions coming from Talkback Radio, obviously, during the week, to some of the people at the AFL. Why Norwood Oval? And then it was explained perfectly, like just the distance within Adelaide Oval, public transport, short trips. But also the Food and Wine Festival on Sunday is a bonus as well.
You even started to get a bit of begrudging acceptance from other club supporters, and explaining that Norwood is the ground which ticks off all their requirements. Mm-hmm. Now, that Greater Western Stand is total corporate and media. Now, no other club's got a grandstand like that for its things. And the AFL, the big wigs, love the fact they've got the Premier's bar, the bar there and all that as well. So it just ticks off everything.
And hearing some of the commentators that hadn't commentated at Norwood Oval, loving that they're almost on the ground with the players. It's a unique environment. I get that. You're a Norwood man, I'm a Norwood man. Played there many a time where you do get that unique perspective. So, look, I think it's fantastic. I think, as you said, there's people now that are saying, hey, Norwood Oval is, there. Maybe we could squeeze a few more in. Maybe a little bit more coverage if it's a hot day. But, look, I think this one was one-off, isn't it?
It's also occupational health and safety. People don't realise the amount of extra railing, which I think's way over the top.
Yes.
But that's the rulings, stops extra people. Now, I've been at Norwood Oval and there's been 20,000 people.
So have I, yep.
But those days are gone. They're not allowed anymore.
Yep.
Now, I think it goes way over the top. I think there should be at least 12 to 13 allowed, but there's not.
Yep.
Now, I will tell you now, a game at Unley or Glenelg, you would be lucky to be allowed 5,000 in there. And people don't realise that.
Yep. Could Norwood put up some temporary stands, though, potentially? Or does that take away from being able to put more people in?
Yeah, it may, because you've so many things have got to be ticked off. And you try to put a temporary stand, say, on that Cooper's Hill.
Yes.
Well, will we actually potentially lose people there and the cost of it, etc.? So, look,
I'm probably thinking more down the northern end where there is a little bit of room to move, but not a lot.
Not enough room back.
Yes.
That's the problem. It's just not quite depth-wise. You've got the toilets down there as well.
Yep. And then you've got the RSL in the corner, whether you could do something around that. Yep.
But there's, again, the laws and all that are so much stricter now.
Correct.
And, yes, you could play a game at Woodville or Elizabeth, whatever, but you haven't got that close to then Adelaide Oval, and that's an important thing, and it would then prevent people going to both games. And you looked around constantly, and then you virtually saw every Guernsey in the crowd. So it is unique feel.
Yep.
I went to the Friday night game.
Yep.
Exactly the same in terms of Collingwood St Kilda. One, I tell you what, live, you appreciate Nick Dacos, how he gets to so many content and he sprints. Good luck trying to tag him because he's such a good athlete and a sprinter. And even Kane Corn said that. Like, Kane was an elite athlete, but he probably wasn't as quick.
Yes.
So he'd just get away on the sprint. So he's just burning people off.
Yep.
Yes, I think there was a bit of umpire eye gazing at him and, a bit in that regard. He gets a bit of the Dacos ruling.
Well, there's a few that are in that boat there.
But also the player who I appreciated more watching live, because you don't see it on TV, is Monica Lipinski. Mm-hmm. How hard he works getting back in the corridor in the hole and being that extra number back defence. And his timing is excellent.
We'll talk about Collingwood and Sydney in a minute, but just question without notice very, very quickly, do you think that's why Darcy Moore is starting to show a little bit more form this year?
Well, it certainly has helped him.
And I think coverage. Houston probably helps that as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and although he didn't play, but I was so impressed with Collingwood structural-wise.
Yep.
Watching live.
All right, so tick for the gather round. We all know that it's a unique environment where supporters are there just for the pure football. There's none of this angst, that you can get between some teams.
Well, just even being out on the Friday night. If you're normally out midnight-ish in Adelaide, you run into some dickheads and some aggressive approach. It's our age, all right, I'm another 10 years older than you, Pete.
Yep.
But our days, you'd walk out of a pub and you were pissed, but you're singing stupid songs and all
and
that.
everyone was enjoying themselves.
Now it's an aggressive intent.
Yep.
You didn't have that.
Yep. And we haven't had that for the first 3 years, have we? It just seems to be
an awesome feeling. And look, I think for me, the people who explain it, there's a group of 8 guys come over from WA.
Yep.
Each hit they barrack for 8 different sides amongst the group of 8. They've all said it's got to be in Adelaide.
Yep. It
can't be in Perth. He goes, we couldn't do this. It'll be nowhere near as good as you guys. I said, that's actually as good an advert as you can get.
Yep. Yeah, don't cook the golden goose.
Yeah.
All right, we've talked about Norwood. We've talked about, obviously, Adelaide Oval. We know how good that is. The Barossa, mate. First time it's gone up there. Probably a little bit more accessible. I know it is a little bit further out than what Mount Barker was, but Mount Barker would have been a nightmare to get to, even for 10,000 people. It just showed up and showcased that
their public
that
transport
area.
was run brilliantly too, and I actually got that back from several people at Norwood who'd been to the game and just said, geez, the public transport was superb.
Yep.
Well, that's a huge tick as well.
Yep. I know potentially that they're looking at maybe a game down in McLaren Vale. Could it happen?
Yeah, potentially. Look, as Mally says, they want to keep evolving and keep growing the concept and keep doing so it doesn't get stale.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Norwood Oval and then the Norwood Food and Wine bit, that's just got to be a press button, dot and repeat.
Yep.
I think 2 games works at Norwood.
Yes.
But then you can say, but you're a Norwood.
Yep.
Person,
Yep.
Crap.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Some fixturing. Do you think they got the fixturing right, or can it be just tweaked a little bit more? Considering, like you said earlier, Collingwood and Sydney got 48,000 on the Friday night.
I'd like to see the time schedules on the Sunday start a little bit earlier. I don't think 7. I reckon 7:10 as a starting time for the Sunday night game. Is that bit late? That's the one thing I'd like to see it changed.
Okay. All right.
Personally.
Well, anyway, we'll leave it there and see what happens. But do certain teams or should certain teams play against each other every year, or do you need to sort of mix it up a little bit?
Well, I think you do need to vary it, and also the absolute hypocrisy of the AFL that you fine Ken Hinkley $20,000 for that and then use the footage in the game as your number one advertising vehicle for the weekend is bullshit.
Yep.
It's absolute disgrace.
Smacks of a little bit of arrogance, doesn't it? All right, let's talk about the games individually. Let's start off with Adelaide. Adelaide going down to Geelong by 19 points. They got to 100, but unfortunately they got their second. They were on fire at one stage, 30-odd points up. Looked like they were going to go on with it.
It's a bit of a bizarre game, though. They kicked into the man on the mark. Hinge kicked into the man on the mark 3 times.
Yep, and so did
2 or 3 times. Laird did.
Yep.
And so there were goals from that. So it was a bit crazy. It was more Adelaide's just own stupid errors. And the comments made about the Adelaide forward line in terms of pressure, yeah, but when you've got a ruckman who places himself, honestly, a bucket of cold water and a flood is more useful than what Riley O'Brien is in the back play.
Well, in Adelaide at the moment, a flood sounds pretty good considering we haven't had any rain for a while.
But, you know, he's just bloody useless in that regard.
And I think, mate, and I've got it on my run sheet here, mate, you're on the money. Everyone's just starting to see the ruck deficiencies, and they really need to attract another ruck. Now, I know Sam Draper, not Sid Draper. Sam Draper is obviously on the radar, but has sort of hinted that he doesn't really want to leave Melbourne.
But they've got McAndrew on the list now. They've got to have a look at him. I don't want to see him treated like Kieran Strawn and just left in the SANFL. He had 21 touches, 31 hit-outs last week. For Christ's sake, have a look at him at some stage. O'Brien's been shit-house the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
Change it over. He's played over 100 games. He's not the ruckman which will take them to the chance of actually really competing.
Yep.
As we said, same thing with Murphy.
Well,
Murphy, I said, don't you dare complain about the umpiring around against the Gold Coast when you pick Murphy. You worshipping mediocrity, don't complain.
Yep, and we did talk about that, going that was just the wrong decision. And the following week, young fella got the nod, which I think was the right move.
What should have happened the previous week.
Correct. Do you think Adelaide can get Draper?
Oh, they'll throw money at him and all that. Who knows? Look, he wanted to see how rucking with Brian was going to work.
Yep.
I was surprised the amount of time he was playing up forward because most guys want to ruck. Well, now Brian's now done his knee out for the year, so Draper will be first ruck.
Yep.
So that may, who knows? Look,
changes the landscape a little bit.
Probably depends. Yeah, a little bit. Probably depends. See how Essendon go. If they fall right away and Adelaide are high, that gets you more chance. But if he's offered a 6-7 year Godfather offer from Essendon, that might be enough. So who knows?
Yep, we're going to watch that one. Watch that one in interest. Just while we're talking about Riley O'Brien and a few other players, let's talk about some free agents for 2025. Riley O'Brien, they're going to hold fire on that one as to see whether they can get someone like Draper across the line.
You know my thoughts.
I do. We'll move on. Brandon Starcevic.
No, concussion, way too big a risk.
Tom DeConing.
Yeah, look, I dare say they're throwing it, but St Kilda are literally throwing the greatest Godfather offer. What he's being offered there is quite insane. Yep. So, I don't think you're going to get that over the line.
Yep. Braden Maynard?
I think he'll either... I'd be surprised if he doesn't end up staying at Collingwood.
There you go. Not too bad. James Warple?
I think he'll stay at Hawthorn.
Controversial one here. Oscar Allen?
I don't think he'll be at West Coast, but I'm not sure where he'll be.
No worries.
I don't think he knows that at the moment.
Ed Richards?
He will stay, and that will be announced in the next couple of weeks. He's staying at Western Bulldogs.
There you go. Marcus Bontempelli.
Yeah, I'm surprised that hasn't progressed a bit more yet. So wait and see, but I'd be amazed if he didn't.
And Tom Liberatore.
He'll end up staying at Western Bulldogs.
They're obviously the top sort of 2025 free agents that we've listed off there. So we'll keep a bit of an eye on that one. All right, let's get back to, obviously, the gather-round games. Collingwood v Sydney. Collingwood by 31. Now, too old, too slow, too everything, and yet they're surprising a few, aren't they?
Shows how speed of ball movement's still the crucial one, not so much. And if you've got the ball, you're fine.
Yep.
It's when you're chasing when you look really slow.
Yep.
They had the ball. They looked the better side. First quarter was a contest. And even when Sydney, I think, were 10 points up in the first quarter, Collingwood were playing the better footy.
Yep.
I always thought Collingwood was still in control.
Yep.
Funny how you're so relaxed at a game as a neutral too.
There you go. Yeah, you're right about that.
You think a bit more logically
and you
in
sort
that.
of watch the
and
play
just
evolve rather than...
And,
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you surprised with Sydney's start to the year?
Yeah, but geez, they have had a lot of injuries.
Yep.
And I think, Goulden's just so important. Yep. Like, let's remember, he was as good as anyone last year, and so they've lost him. Papley's a big out as well.
Yep.
Amadi getting injured during the game, they didn't have they looked terrible up forward.
Mm-hmm.
They really didn't look like they were going to score. I know Papley's out, but I would have liked to have seen a bit more chaos ball. Ball kicked in low. It's still the most underutilised playing footy. Let's create a bit of chaos.
Richmond won a couple of premierships based upon that principle there anyway.
Exactly.
Just a quick question without notice there. Will Sydney, and let's just say the Bulldogs a little bit, because they've got a few to come back as well, are they going to come through that middle part of the season with a bit of a flurry and could potentially just hang around that 8 area and then really launch from there?
Possibly, but then you don't know if they get more injuries.
Correct.
So you just got to wait and see.
The old ifs, buts and candy nuts.
Yep.
Exactly right. Let's move on to North Melbourne v the Suns. Suns just flexing their muscle a little bit by 52 points.
And North Melbourne were 10 points up during the third quarter. And then Rao pushed the button. The others followed him, jump aboard, and, they were very good from there.
Yep.
Did see a bit of that at the time.
We know Gold Coast have got some talent there. There's no doubt about that. But is it a case of that they're just doing what they need to do at the moment? Is that dimmer?
Yeah, I think so. So play Richmond this week. So they go to 5-0 there. geez, you've only got to win another 7 to play finals.
And they were pretty
They'll
good at
play
home.
finals.
Pretty good at home last year, weren't they? Carlton getting up over the West Coast Eagles by 71 points. Now, even me as a Carlton man, mate, their ball movement connection was woeful, but West Coast is even worse than that.
Yeah, Carlton are just going, and West Coast aren't going whatsoever.
Now, leadership seems to be the big question point there.
Massively.
I'm going to ask you, considering it seems to be the hot talking point, do you think Harley Reid will be at West Coast next year or the year after and beyond?
It's looking more unlikely for mine.
If so, who's got the draft capital or the points to be able to get him? Because obviously he's got a little bit of a connection with Essendon, but Essendon don't have the greatest hand in the world.
I think there'll be lots of things happening behind the scenes, and I think it's just too hard to tell yet. But I think at the moment, one, his footy's not progressing, and if anything, it's gone backwards from last year. Now, that does happen, as we know, players a second year.
Yep.
But they're just a mile off, and they look shit house.
How does it come to this? How does West Coast, being one of the
the powerhouse financially,
best clubs going around financially and really administratively for quite some time, to completely fall in such a hole, basically since COVID?
Oh, yeah, and that horrendous press conference with Oscar Allen, which did nothing. It was better off not to have it.
And he's wearing like a brown and gold yellow.
Terrible.
It was just like,
it was revolting.
Comedy Company revived. We'll watch that one with interest. The Bulldogs just going down, obviously, to Brisbane Lions. Brisbane have got a knack this year of doing what Collingwood have done and come from behind a few times.
Yeah, and look, we always look at the coaches' votes afterwards, and most times you mightn't totally agree with it. You can still see where it comes from. Now, Eric Hipwood at halftime,
one possession,
but it wasn't only that. He was worst on ground at halftime by that far. It was a space second.
He was the 50th ranked player, I heard.
He was effectively, he'd got an invite to Western Bulldogs presentation night at that stage. He'd been that bad the first half.
Yep.
Dominates the second half and got 9 coaches' votes. So that really surprised me. Look,
is that because he changed the game,
he
though?
Did, but he did. And look, he was the match winner. I've got no problem with that. But I'm examining a player over 4 quarters. I'm just surprised he got the 9. Now, McLuggage was the best player over the 4 quarters. Yep. And I would have thought, and there were others, in terms of 4 quarters. Now, if I'm doing that, I'm not rewarding a guy who's shithouse to halftime. And in terms of, it was also his lack of competitiveness in the first half.
Well,
like at halftime, I would have loved to. The old-fashioned way, it would have been you would have grabbed him in the change rooms and thrown him against the locker at halftime.
Giving him a complete bake.
Yeah.
Mate, I know you're at Norwood Oval for this game here. What were your thoughts on Darcy, mate? Because he is a man-mountain and it's going to be hard to stop him at times.
Oh, and it was just enthralling to watch him and Andrews, the battle.
Yep.
And, of course, because the scoreboard at Norwood is in the corner.
Yes.
So, the duel at that end of the ground for 2 quarters was brilliant.
Yep.
And one of Darcy's marks, I wish I'd had my iPad out and taken the photo at the time, because our view on the scoreboard was sensational, and it would have been a photo for the ages.
Would have been one to hang up on the what do they call it? The pool room floor or the pool room or the man cave?
Yeah, it was an incredible mark. It just, He's 8 foot billion tall, and he took the ball at the maximum height. Like, you can't spoil that. And it was Andrews. His use of his body was really good, and Darcy still made it. It was just brilliant. And look, Zach Bailey was pretty important as well. Good to see the Norwood boy there, and that. Mind you, I think he only played a couple of junior games for us, but we still claim it.
That's right.
Yeah,
they
still
all
had
count.
home ground advantage.
They all count. That's exactly right.
And that, so he was vital. It was 1 point the difference at the 22-minute mark.
Yep.
On the scoreboard, one of the numbers locked on the scoreboard would not come out.
Yep.
I had to break it to get it out, and there wouldn't. So you're scared shitless you're going to splinter the crap out of yourself.
Yep.
But you've got to do it quickly to get the number back up.
Yep.
So I managed to do that without hurting myself and get the number back up. And
well done. Old-fashioned scoreboards. There you go.
Yes.
All right, let's move on.
Got a fair bit of compliment on the scoreboard on the Footy Almanac site, where people said it was just so pleasant to have an old-fashioned scoreboard, and Yeah, it was interesting how many people commented about that in that regard.
There you go. Fantastic. All right, let's move on. Melbourne going down to Essendon by 39 points. I'll tell you right now, if West Coast are in a world of pain, Melbourne, I think, are in even more of a world of pain considering the talent that they do have on that list.
I've now come to the personal decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was not conclusion now. Can't play Viney and Oliver in the same midfield. There's just no pace.
Yep.
Nothing away from a contest. And it's just the same. And their ball movement forward, Melbourne, is horrendous.
Well, they haven't had a full forward since Ben Brown, really, have they?
Yeah, Van Ruin just hasn't quite kicked on. He looked potentially, but hasn't done enough. But it's their ball movement. Shit.
What about does that impact someone like Bailey Fritsch?
Yes. Mind you, he's become too selfish.
Yep.
I'd be pissed off with him as a teammate at times.
Yep. But is that because they don't have any options that are not working there, that he is feeling like he's got to take it on?
Yeah, but I also come back to the chaos ball.
Yep.
For Christ's sake, just get it in quickly and low. Just try something. You're kicking it high and it's just terrible and it's too long, it's too slow. Get it in quickly. You've got Pickett back.
Yes.
Let
him
I'm
create
just
some
a bit
chaos.
bewildered by it.
No, all good. Richmond taking on Fremantle out at Barossa Park there. Richmond were competitive for a small period of time there, but again, it's just their youth not having that tank, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, I think that's going to be the way. They're going to be, I think them and West Coast are both at times going to be in games to half time, and then the opposition flex their muscle a bit.
Yep.
A bit like Gold Coast did against North Melbourne there as well, and just run over them.
Well, do you see them being ahead of, say, a West Coast and a Melbourne at the moment?
I think it's line ball.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Melbourne might be headed that way.
Yep.
But, yeah, I think Richmond and West Coast are in for 3 years of pain.
Yep.
I thought for the year Richmond were a distinct chance not to win a game, and then they win the first one, which I think is still going to be the most important loss for the year.
Don't remind me. That is just PTSD. I'm absolutely gutted. Well done there to Fremantle, and they're just getting going at the moment.
Yeah, just starting.
St Kilda just going down to GWS Giants. That was not a bad little game. Again, a lot of people talking about Norwood Oval. Basically, there's no space, but this time around, there's tons of space.
There is. It's a fallacy. It was ironic. A few of the Norwood boys may have come up. Yeah, we'll probably leave that alone a little bit. But talking to Nick Rokar and all that, was saying it's bullshit in terms of no space. Yes, it's shallow wings, but there's still places, there's still holes to go to. You had to look at Neville Roberts, Michael H, Keith Thomas, chip the ball around amongst themselves, Greg Turnbull in the old days. There's holes there.
Yes.
And GWS just showed it. Was their disposal by foot was a mile better than St Kilda's.
Yep.
That's the big thing. They're not carrying players.
Yep.
Lockie Ash and Whitfield across half-back are the two best ball users there are in that spot.
Yep.
And I think that's where those two will cut Adelaide up this weekend.
All right, we'll talk about that one in a minute. To finish off, Port Adelaide were irresistible against Hawthorn, getting up by 30 points, but they were out as much as 72 points, I believe it was, just before half-time. They were irrepressible, obviously, in the first half. They really looked like they couldn't do anything wrong.
And they did actually play a bit of chaos ball.
Yep.
Get it in low and quick.
Yep. What did you think about Rosie heading back to half-back? Was that a masterful move?
It's a very good move, but, yeah, as you've said here, let's remember, that's where he got drafted from. That's where he won. I still have nightmares of him at 18 from the final series.
Yes.
That's his spot. And so they were a bit better. It was ironic. They were actually a bit better balanced because their better players were spread out a bit more.
Yep.
So, he was effectively the Houston replacement. He kicked 2 goals from halfback.
Yep.
Bergman kicks a goal as well.
And looked impressive.
So, it'll be interesting to see this week. They're playing Sydney. Sydney will play him tighter now. They'll expect him to be at halfback. So you only get away with that once.
Yep. Did it give greater balance, though, to put Adelaide through that midfield with, at times, they had Horne-Francis forward, Butters in the middle, and Rosie on that half-back?
It meant that Drew was actually in the midfield, not on a wing, and he's not a wingman.
Yep.
It meant Wines could be inside, and that's they're both. That's their two best spots. So
Yes.
their players were better spread.
Yep.
Through it.
Is that going to be the? And I've got this on the run sheet there. That obviously, first 5 games of the season. Where are they realistically at? Is that something that they can sort of launch off a little bit, or is it still that depth that's their biggest Achilles heel at the moment?
I think it is. The interesting part so far, they've played 2 away games, got blown away in one, and then managed to be worse than Essendon were in the other, in what was still pretty close, one of the worst games of the year.
Yep.
Of which I think at the moment, it's just showing 18 teams is too many. We're going to add another one.
Yep.
There's too many teams at the moment who aren't good enough.
Yep.
So anyway,
So
we're not going to stop it.
No, but after 5 games, are they realistically about where they should be?
Yeah, it's a big game for them this week.
Yep.
And for me, it's a test mentally.
Yep.
That let's see how they go away, because at the moment they've played 2 away games and they've been shithouse in them. Will they be better because it's in Sydney than Melbourne?
Maybe.
And their record against Sydney is good overall.
And
yes, they lost last year's prelim, but their record overall against Sydney is good.
And they're getting Sydney at the right time with all those injuries that we talked about a little bit ago.
Very unconvincing.
They were. All right, mate. Last one for you. We should have talked about it a little bit earlier, but where are Adelaide at, considering they've played a couple of pretty good teams so far? I mean, it looks like Gold Coast are up and about and really could have won that game there.
I think lack of depth is what you're saying. They only need a few injuries. If Murray and Rochelle hadn't been injured, they're probably 5-0 at the moment. Everyone be raving on about them as potential,
So
chance. I think they fall away very quickly.
Right. So they've got to really build that sort of that 20.
They do, but I just want to see
players.
them play Zach Taylor, play Dowling, play Ryan, play some of the youngsters who have got talent.
Yep.
And
Yep, go from there.
Yeah.
Last one, mate. Question with notice, because this one is out on our run sheet. Is Nick Murray Adelaide's most important player this year, just like Riley Thilthorpe was Adelaide's most important player last year?
I think he's Adelaide's most important defender. I think their defence looks so much more balanced with him in it.
Yep. Where's Jordan Butts at?
Yeah, probably his footy. I can see why they're not picking him. His footy's lacked continuity over the last few years, but that's where playing Malira from round 1 doesn't make sense, because it's one or the other, and they've gone completely opposite on the 2 of them.
Yep.
So, I don't get that.
Is it just that dynamic on Malira?
Yeah, they rate him, but
yeah. He's a bit of X factor off that half-back line when he gets going. But anyway, that's all right. All right, mate, let's move on to this week's games. Thursday night, we've got the Brisbane Lions playing against Collingwood in a traditional Easter Thursday round game, which is always fantastic.
Yeah, I'll obviously be at Norwood, so bit of a bummer, because I'd actually would honestly love to see this game.
Yep.
Because after what I really enjoyed watching Collingwood last week, and Brisbane.
Yes. You almost need to get like a portable TV up in that old scoreboard.
So I look for, obviously I'll be at the home of football.
Absolutely. Who's your pick on this one, mate?
Look, the old if in doubt, go the home side. But honestly, toss the coin.
I'm going to go Brisbane on this one. I think Collingwood are playing good, but I think the Brisbane Lions have still got another gear to go to at the moment. And I think the little scare against the Western Bulldogs there on the weekend here in Adelaide might have just sort of sharpened up a few, and it looks like Fags has got them absolutely firing again, and he's got depth. That's the other thing that's scary about Brisbane. North Melbourne v Carlton in an Easter Friday charity game, I believe it is.
Yeah, it's to do with the Royal Children's Hospital, and so it's great in that regard, and very important. I still wish that happened here as well. I'm still dumbfounded by that.
Yep. Believe it or not, North Melbourne 13th, Carlton 16th.
Yeah, look, it's a toss. Kemp and Mackay out, so you wonder where Carlton are going to get their goals from.
Yep.
But North Melbourne have been pretty disappointing the last few weeks. I'm going to go for Carlton.
Carlton for me but it's going to be an entertaining game either way. All right. The other game on Good Friday there is West Coast v Essendon over in Optus Stadium.
West Coast would lose an internal trial game at the moment, so I'll go Essendon.
They lose against the under-18s quite convincingly at the moment. All right, Essendon for me. All right, let's move on to Saturday. Super Saturday, Melbourne v the Dockers. This one has some huge ramifications. We didn't talk about it a little bit earlier. Let's talk about it now. Simon Goodwin, could his head be on the chopping block?
I think it's getting close.
Is Beveridge the answer?
Who knows? But yeah, who knows? But
All right.
I'll go for Fremantle.
Fremantle for me there as well, and that'd be 0-6 for Melbourne. Not a great start of the season. This one's probably one of the games around Adelaide v the GWS Giants.
Yeah, I think GWS's ball use will just be too good for Adelaide.
Yep.
Just a leap, far better by foot.
Yep.
And I think it'll be similar to St Kilda. Just a few of Adelaide's players will get exposed by foot compared to GWS. For mine, that'll be the difference.
If Murray comes back?
Yeah, I still just think I think their batting from player, 18 to 25.
Yep. Just that
is
little
far
bit
more better.
Yep. Richmond v Gold Coast.
Gold Coast convincingly.
Gold Coast for me, and considering it's at Marvel Stadium.
Yep.
Could some of these games here, let's, again, question without notice, could some of these games like a Richmond and the Suns, or say a North Melbourne and the Suns, be at a suburban ground somewhere in Melbourne if this is what they're yearning for a little bit?
Yeah, potentially, but there's still ground contracts for how many games have got to be played.
Fair enough.
It's not an easy one.
That's why I asked that. Just thought I'd throw that one out there.
Yeah.
Sydney v Port Adelaide.
Old if in doubt, go the home side as well, but I think Port are a huge chance.
Okay, I'm going to go Sydney on this occasion, but only just. The Bulldogs v St Kilda. This one's got a bit of interest for me too.
Yeah, if Bont's back,
I don't think Bont will be back until next week, but if he does play, does that give the Bulldogs...
look, he's still going to be underdone a fair bit. You'd think he'd probably spend a bit of time up forward.
Yep.
St Kilda and were they being okay? No, I'll go the Dogs.
All right, I'm going to go St Kilda, but only just.
It's a toss of the
It
coin.
is a toss of the coin. Before we move on there, Jamara Ugle-Hagan, where's that at as far as the Crows almost had a chance to draft him? It's probably the right decision in the end.
I agree with Mark Bickley today where he made the point that because he's on full pay at the moment. Now, there should be more recompense back to the system. That yes, there could be you get payment of living expenses and all that.
Yep.
You're off on this, but he shouldn't be receiving full pay.
Yep.
It'd be like,
well, it's no incentive, is it, to go to work?
no, it's like you and I deciding, we'll only work 3 days out of 5 this week. Well, you do that, you're not paid for the 5 days. So, I think it's weighted too much towards the player.
Yep.
And I think the system should be changed.
I think it might be changed with the new CEO coming in hopefully pretty soon. And then the traditional Easter Monday, the Cats v the Hawks. This one is going to be an absolute cracker.
Yeah. I'm going to go for the Cats.
I'm going to go for the Cats too. I think that Port Adelaide exposed a few things against Hawthorn.
I think Hawthorn may be a bit ahead of themselves. I think their attitude will be a bit better this week.
But Sam Mitchell wasn't, because for the last 2 or 3 weeks he's been saying, no, I don't think so, I don't think so, I don't think so.
But I reckon the players might have got... And I think I'd like to see Hawthorn not trying to kick the ball to Shoal so much.
Yep.
I thought that was ridiculous.
Yep. Anyway, all right, 2 last questions on the AFL. Patrick Voss, 3 games upheld for a crude hit. What are your thoughts?
Blatant. Can't believe Fremantle tried to appeal, got it downgraded.
Yep.
For mine, it was ridiculous. I was all in favour of this appeals and all that to start with.
Yep.
I'm now going the other way. Bring on an extra game as well. Get rid of these. Richmond did it with Lynch.
Yep.
There's just bullshit appeals, throwing darts at it,
and they've got the money to.
Yeah, they said
someone up for it.
I'm trying to remember. Someone else in the media today said, "Well, increase the fee from $10,000 to try and make it $30,000 and off your soft cap. That'll stop some of these frivolous appeals."
Absolutely. Last one, the Willie Rioli comments, mate. Your thoughts? Was it a little too much, or was it a personal view that sort of got a little bit out of hand?
It was personal, but it shouldn't have been said.
Yep.
No, Rioli's at fault here on that for saying it. We've all got our thoughts on various things and can't say it.
Yep.
That's life. I thought he went overboard, way overboard.
Yep.
And, not defending the racism comments back, obviously,
we
but
know
I'm just saying I don't think it was well done I thought it was poor by Rioli. Let's leave it at that.
Yep. No, and he's spoken with Sam Mitchell saying it's nothing personal against him. It's just
should have been said.
Exactly right. All right, mate, let's take a very, very quick break. We've really got through a lot of AFL stuff today, but coming up, Adelaide United, unfortunately, just can't get on the winning sheet tonight, or this season. Matty Clark hanging up the coaching boots at the end of the AFLW season. And Norwood CEO James Fantasia also hanging up the boots as of June 30 this year.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Looking to buy or sell your home anywhere in Adelaide, from the hills to the sea? Meet Gary KRIEVS, your dedicated local agent from OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. With unparalleled knowledge of Adelaide's housing market and a commitment to exceptional service, Gary ensures a smooth and stress-free experience for all your real estate needs. Trust the expert, trust Gary KRIEVS at OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. Your next dream home awaits. Contact Gary today on 0422 071 317 or on email garyk@ocre.com.au. And for more listings, please visit owenscasserly.com.au. Make it happen. We thank our sponsors as per usual, mate. All right,
Thanks, Gaz, and thank you to Craig, and better give those two a ring this week.
Absolutely. Yes. All right, let's talk Adelaide United. Big form slump. Where does it all go wrong? But first, the rumours about Carl Viet have been all confirmed. He will be leaving Adelaide United at the end of the season.
You know what? I would have rather seen it done now, done before last week.
Yep.
You know, just cut it. You've made that call.
Yes.
It's not working. We've fallen away. Obviously, it doesn't look harmonious. So make the change now.
Yep. And he looked clearly cut up about the decision. But a good club man basically said, look, we're here to do the best we can with what we've got left. And maybe that does spur a few on. Maybe it causes a few just to sort of go into their shell a little bit and protect their position.
I think it just, once you've made that call, I don't think it helps the person staying. I just would have gone, bang.
Yep, absolutely. All right, where to for Adelaide United moving forward? Can they make the finals?
No.
There you go, one-word answer. Absolutely love it. And just a little rumour that I heard last night, Craig Goodwin might be making a return to Adelaide United next year.
Yeah, that'd be great if it does happen.
Two good ones in the same team?
Yeah, no, they need him. They need him.
They absolutely do. And then that probably gets back to what we asked a couple of weeks ago about whether they're a development club, whether they're a club that's trying to win the premiership. So anyway, all right, let's talk about Doc Clark. The AFL has announced that he's going to retire at the season's end. Fantastic record with the Adelaide AFLW team.
Yeah, and internally they did that virtually almost at the end of last season. So that it's not
nothing
surprising news or anything.
Yep.
That's Matty's well organised. I did see him on Sunday, but unfortunately I was making my way back into the ground at Norwood, so I didn't have a chance to have a chat to him.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I'm sure we'll catch up with him over the course of the AFLW season. All right, let's talk SANFL. Norwood CEO retires after a stunning career with Norwood and the Crows. Was he at the Bulldogs for a little while?
Yes, and Hawthorn
And Hawthorn,
Yeah. So all the best with James there. So.
Absolutely, wishing him the best in his retirement there. All right, how does the SANFL leverage the new grounds that they've invested in for future use? I'm talking about Mount Barker, obviously the Barossa, if they're looking at doing something up in the...
Well, as I said, I'd love Sturt to move to Mount Barker. I've been very open, but the problem is you've magnificent upgrade of the Thomas room and all that, so that's probably not going to happen.
No.
But I'd just, out of that, but I still think that's their area to potentially grow.
Yes.
So, Barossa, why not Central's moved to the Barossa.
Yep.
You know, I think that'd be awesome.
Yep.
So anyway.
Yeah, could be interesting times there, especially with Adelaide and Port Adelaide potentially leaving the SANFL at some stage. Is there a chance of maybe getting a team somewhere from that area using those grounds?
Maybe, but geez, it's a big financial thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a big ask, isn't it?
We've got the players either.
Yep.
You know, there's not enough players at the AFL for 18 teams, let alone the next bit.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk games this weekend. Most games played on Friday, except for the first one, which is Norwood v Sturt at the home of football, as you like calling it, Cooper Stadium.
Unfortunately, I'll go for Sturt.
Sturt for me there as well. West Adelaide v the Eagles.
Go the Eagles.
Eagles for me. The Roosters v the Bulldogs. Probably game of the
Game of the
round.
round.
Or
Oh,
close
no,
to
the
the game
next
round.
one,
Yeah, the
next
next
one,
one is
I'll go for Centrals.
Centrals for me there. This is the game of the round. Adelaide v the Crows. Glenelg v the Crows.
So they'll also hold virtually at the same time. No, what time's that starts at? 4?
That one starts at 4:10, and Adelaide play at 3:50 on the Saturday.
So they'll hold a player back for the warm-up. It'll be interesting to see whether they rush them to Glenelg to play or not. Yeah, it's an interesting one, that one.
Yep. So Adelaide play the Giants on Saturday at 3:45.
Oh, so that's Saturday, isn't it? So,
Saturday.
yeah, so they will hold a player over
Yep.
at least one and potentially two.
Yep.
That's probably enough for me to go for Glenelg.
I'm going to tip a draw. How about that? There you go. You never know.
I might go down to that game, actually.
Yeah, should be beautiful. And Port Adelaide v the Panthers.
I'll go Port.
All right, mate. Port it is. All right, let me just get myself organised here.
And I will predict that possibly maybe the lowest crowd Port Adelaide have ever had.
At Alberton Oval?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, you won't see.
Oh,
I know it's Good Friday and hopefully there'll be a few, but yeah.
All right. Let's have a look at what's coming up on Friday. We got Jordan Buckingham Part 2. That was a good chat with him.
Bucky was great.
He was. And Braden Lyle Part 2 as well on Monday coming up.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
A dents and scratches putting a dent in your day? Introducing Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide, your trusted solution for automotive woes. With over 2 decades of expertise, Roger Steen Crash Repairs guarantees top-notch service, restoring your vehicle to its former glory in no time. From minor dings to major collisions, our skilled technicians handle it all with precision and care, using state-of-the-art equipment and techniques.
Roger Steen Crash Repairs saved my car. It looks brand new.
Fast, friendly and reliable. I wouldn't trust anyone else with my vehicle. Don't let accidents slow you down. Visit Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide at 14 Penner Avenue, Glynde, for quality service you can count on. And here's a special offer just for our listeners. Mention this podcast and receive a $100 discount on your repair. Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide. Excellence in every repair.
Flashbacks. You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Some amazing scenes at Norwood today before the very first bounce of the match, and we're about to have a look at exactly what happened. And as you can see, it's a reasonable sort of a melee, and we'll just pick up the commentary first.
Here at the parade, both sets of teams decided to use the southern end as their warm-up, and all of a sudden there was a melee. 38 players. Because the players are on the ground, the umpires are quite within their rights to make reports. As yet, Coach Baum and Coach Curley have not been sighted on the ground.
Well, there's always a first, and certainly this
in the all-time memory of South Australian football, never before scenes like this. Incredible.
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, mate. The Norwood v Centrals clash. Norwood v Port in the grand final. Norwood v Centrals training at the same end. How things have changed, mate.
Yes, one of our previous guests, Tommy Warhurst, did make a bit of a contribution there.
Yes.
And yes. Geez, the atmosphere at Norwood was electric that day.
Absolutely. Well, Norwood have hosted some big games and some big events. That's why I thought I'd throw this one back out there. Bit of biff before the game, but also Norwood obviously hosting during the gather round. So there's been some historical things that have happened at Norwood Oval, and I think that's another one that we thought we'd just play tonight.
Very much so.
All right, mate. Let's. We're going to move on just in the extra time big finish. You got one more thing on the SANFL that we just skipped over on the run sheet.
Look, I haven't chased up what the crowd was at Barossa. I admit I meant to ask Billy Cootie that on Sunday and just roughly what it was like and all that. But I would have loved that game. Last year, the state game at Glenelg got over 4,000. I would have loved that game to be at Richmond. West Adelaide are the club most bones on their bum, well and truly financially.
Yep.
Lots of things going on there. They're the club who need the most support to be alive, and I think that's the state game there. 3,000 to 4,000 people, catering wise, that would have helped West Adelaide out. And I think the game should have been at Richmond.
Yep. All right, let's move on. Let's talk cricket. Travis Head absolutely having a day out in the IPL. What was it, 50 off of very little number of balls?
A big partnership to win the game. Yeah, look.
And it was a big score in the end. I think it was like 245 or thereabouts.
Yeah, 245. Yep. And a bit of fun with Stoinis and Maxwell, bit of theatre.
Yep.
2020 all is. So,
exactly right. Well, I know it's not your favourite form of cricket, but it's certainly providing a lot of entertainment. That's really what it is. I'm not sure whether we talked about this last week, but Young Gun announces his retirement from all forms of cricket following his head knocks. Will Pekowski.
Yeah, look, I think he was allowed too many. This should have happened probably over 2 years ago now, 2 to 3 years ago.
Yep.
There seemed to be things going on behind the scenes allowing more there than what there should have been.
Yep.
It was a bit crazy.
Yes. Because he's retiring from all forms of cricket. He's not even playing local cricket, shield cricket, or anything like that. It's done and dusted.
I think he's 14 concussions.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Is that one of Australia's wasted talents?
Oh, no doubt about that.
Yep.
It's incredible for a guy who's such a good player, never really mastered the short ball, but because he'd had so many concussions, there became some bizarre ones. He managed to knock himself out fielding at mid-on one game. He dived to stop a ball and knocked himself out. So there
was a bit like
crazy stuff.
Was it McCartan from Sydney who basically dived for a ball on the boundary line? Looked like there was nothing really in it, and then that was it. That was the end of his career. So
he had so many before it.
Yeah. Let's talk NRL very quickly. The Bulldogs sitting on top with 5 wins from 5 starts.
They're looking pretty good.
They are looking pretty good at the moment. And the Storm getting back up to their rightful spot at number 2.
Storm is still going to be. They're going to be around the mark as they always are.
Exactly right. All right, let's move on to tennis. Monte Carlo Masters. Alex de Minaur was absolutely in form. But a rare double bagel, which does not happen at that level and in those type of tournaments, because the Masters, obviously the Monte Carlo is some of the top players. He scores a 6-love against a top player and opponent, but then goes out in the quarterfinals or semi-finals.
Semi, I think.
Yep.
So, look, he went that bit further, but as we constantly talk about, look, I think he's getting the most out of himself. So we can't be critical. But we'd love him to win one.
Wouldn't we ever? I think it was the first time since 1972, correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, that Australia had 2 players in the quarters, I think it was, of a Monte Carlo Masters on the clay, which is very, very good. It would have been good to see de Minaur make the final and play against Alcaraz. That would have been just to see where he's at, especially on the clay court where the King of Clay is now retired.
Jordan Thompson, yeah.
No, Alexi Popper.
Sorry, it was Popper.
Alexi Popper, yeah.
Apologies, I was trying to...
No, that's all right. And probably to finish us off here, one of the biggest events on the sporting calendar, and that is the Masters in the golf. Rory McIlroy decides that he's going to, snatch the victory from jaws of defeat at one stage there.
Both ways,
Yes.
really. And look, the Masters is my favourite golf tournament. Yep. I'm not a golf...
And it's a traditional tournament, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't mind golf, but it's not my number one,
Yes.
and that. But the Masters is the tournament. I think its history, its location, and the area has gone through a hurricane and heaps of damage there, but they still have the golf course looking pristine.
Yep.
And it is, and I think the commentary there also, the guy there, he just nails it every year.
Yep.
And it was, and it fluctuated back and forth, and he
did it ever.
missed an easy putt at the 18th, and then birdies the extra to beat Rose. It was, to get the Grand Slam 11 years after he'd previously he's been coming back, at Masters 17 years now. So,
and he's completed the trophy cabinet, hasn't he?
He's now got it. He's become one of the six, so 1 of 6.
Will he go on and potentially become the best player ever, or is that a bit like basketball with Jordan and LeBron?
I think Tiger would have been if he didn't let off-field, if he'd been
indiscretion
more,
sort of slow him down a little bit.
Yes.
So. Interesting. All right, mate. A couple of quick questions without notice. Day grand final, night grand final, twilight grand final for the AFL.
I still like day. I love the tradition of it. I love the barbecue with your mates and all that. I think it will go twilight.
Yep. SANFL, day, night, or twilight for something different?
I think it'll still stay day. Yeah.
And every final barring the grand final at suburban grounds?
It's got to happen. It should have happened well before now. I'm disappointed it hasn't happened yet.
All right, mate. We'll leave the questions without notice there. You're good, the bad, the ugly for the week, mate. You're good?
The good was just the feeling in Adelaide.
Absolutely.
That's probably my big thing with Gather Round. It's the 1 week where everyone is mates.
Yep.
And there's just no bullshit aggro stupidity in general. Yeah, of course there's still some crap, but overall, my bad was the authority of one particular woman.
Yes.
In Elder Park.
Yep.
Just common sense were not the words which went together there.
No, fair call. And you're ugly for the week?
Ugly, Melbourne.
Yeah.
Melbourne were horrendous against Essendon.
Yep.
Absolutely horrendous.
Yep. Were you surprised that Carlton and West Coast were playing at Adelaide Oval, considering where they're at the moment?
Yeah, I was. I know Carlton's the big club. You're not, out of that. Mm-hmm. But they've sent Richmond. Richmond have been at Norwood and the Barossa the last 2 years. So I'm a little bit surprised.
Yep. Is that a fan survey where they
potentially
canvass their members saying, would you go to this event? And if a club like a Richmond, who are huge, going, well, no, we're not going to travel for this event.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard of anything around the traps with that. And you'd think that would have got out.
Yep.
And that's,
or is it on a rotational basis like that, so Richmond will be at Adelaide Oval
You'd think
next
they
year?
will. Well, considering Hawthorn asked to be at Norwood, once you had that happen, you would have thought, well, we'll just send them to Norwood.
Yep.
So, it's a bit bewildering, but, Brisbane to have played in the last 2 grand finals probably deserve Adelaide Oval, but they're quite happy at Norwood. So,
And that suburban ground doesn't hurt them any way, shape or form. All right, mate, we're going to wind things up there. Thank you for your time once again, mate. It's a huge gather-round sort of wind up.
Yeah, it sort of had to be, I think. Just because gather-round is so big in South Australia and just as I said, very unusual for me to be out at night.
Yes.
And it was just a good atmosphere.
Absolutely. Mate, we better wind things up there. As per usual, we've got to do better, but like, rate, subscribe, pass it on to friends, family. I know we had a few likes over the weekend, especially on our YouTube channel with some of the shorts that we had up and about. So if you do see them floating about online, please like, rate, and subscribe.
Yeah,
those numbers
share with your
definitely
mates.
help us, and definitely share with your mates. All right, mate, until next week, We'll see you then. Thanks, mate.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.